When you hear the word polycrisis, what do you think about? The two parts of the word, poly and crisis, are actually of ancient Greek origin. The Collins Dictionary defines it as the simultaneous occurrence of several catastrophic events. We live in the age of polycrisis. I mean, you only need to watch the news, read the news, to be bombarded with images of, burning forests, dying species, mounting plastic waste, growing inequality and never-ending wars. And, if you think about these crises, these 5 interconnected global crises, they've really created a perfect storm. Climate change, pollution, nature loss, inequality, injustice, and conflict. And what is really critical is that these kind of things, they follow us around. For me personally, the polycrisis is something that has been a constant backdrop to my involvement in social and environmental movements. So in the early 2000s, I got involved in student politics in Wales to do something about the emerging climate crisis. But also I took part in rallies to protest against the war in Iraq, for example. But 20 years, and more than 20 years on, and there's growing inequality, worsening climate crisis, and there's still no peace in the Middle East. But there's something fundamental that has changed within me, and I don't feel hopeless. And it's all because of a change in mindset. And I would like to share with you the power of your mindset. And I do believe, that we can set this world on a path of recovery, to build a bridge towards recovery with a new mindset. And that mindset is a just and regenerative mindset. And why do we need to focus on mindsets and mindset shifts? Mindsets really sit at the heart of how we approach change. Mindsets are the set of assumptions, concepts, values that inform how we see the world. And it is so important to think about this in terms of transformation and transitions towards the future and building a more optimistic future. Because I do believe that, if we can transform our mindset from this kind of exploitative, extractive mindset to a just and regenerative mindset, we can finally, move away from this focus on problems and firefighting problems like the polycrisis, and really addressing to really address the potential that we have as stewards of this beautiful but also fragile planet. So I'd like to share with you 4 mindsets from the Forum for the Future's Business Transformation Compass. But it really builds on the work of many great practitioners and thought leaders in this space. For example, the Regenesis Institute. And these 4 mindsets are, first of all, we've got the risk mitigation mindset. And then we've got the zero harm mindset. And there's the do good mindset. And finally, the just and regenerative mindset. And of course, these are the kind of mindsets that we can adopt in our personal life. These are kind of individual mindsets, but they do apply across different dimensions. So we've got the organizational dimension as well in the business, the organizations you work for. You've got the wider social context and the political, economic one, and also within nature as well. So let's start with the risk mitigation mindset. So the risk mitigation mindset is really about doing less harm for the most efficient outcomes. And it's often really about doing the minimum necessary. And often it's because of legal compliance needs and also, reducing immediate risk. So if we just think about, the individual level, as an individual, what could you be doing to reduce your risk and reduce the harm that you're causing? So the kind of things that you could be thinking about is you could be using less water, you could be using less plastics, you could be voting for political parties that promise to reduce social injustice. And for me personally, what I've done with this risk mitigation mindset is I've adopted a flexitarian diet. So I've kind of reduced my meat, red meat intake, and that's really because I have this risk reduction mindset of kind of reducing health risk, but also reducing climate impacts. If you're a business, the kind of things with a risk mitigation mindset you could be thinking about is focusing on environmental, social, and governance indicators, like ESG indicators, kind of to track your impact on the planet. Or you could be reducing the gender pay gap in your company. If you're a politician, the kind of thing you could be doing with a risk mitigation mindset is you could be adopting human rights legislation, or you could be thinking about the kind of things as a politician that where you would reduce the impacts of your country on the planet, and you could also be in terms of social injustice, you could be adopting legislation that reduces social injustice. But then these are things that really address the kind of symptoms of the polycrisis that don't really look at addressing the kind of root causes. So other things that you could be looking at is actually adopting a zero harm mindset. And that zero harm mindset is really about eradicating the harmful impacts of your activities and the activities of business and countries. And it's really about building that kind of resilience. But ultimately, it's about maintaining the current system. So with the zero harm mindset as an individual, the kind of thing you could be doing is you could be reducing, kind of almost like eliminating, no longer reduce, but eliminating the waste that you produce on a daily basis. So for example, you could be kind of reusing or repairing stuff, for example, clothes. So for me personally, what I've done, I really love these turtleneck sweaters. They are really my favorite. So what I have done to kind of reduce my impact, kind of eliminate the impact of clothes, is that I'm kind of repairing and reusing kind of my turtlenecks. And I haven't really thrown away any of those in years or even decades. But just kind of returning to that mindset, that zero harm mindset. So if you think about what business could be doing, there could be creating career advancement opportunities for everyone, all the employees equally within their companies. And if you think about countries, if you think about countries with this kind of zero harm mindset, they could be just kind of eliminating, the impacts that, their activities have on nature. They could be, adopting legislation for that. And there's, for example, the, ecocide. So more than 11 countries have adopted this banned ecocide. But then if we look at these kind of things, ultimately they're not really about addressing the polycrisis. They're not really turning the tide on the polycrisis. So if we then look at another level, this is the kind of the do-good mindset. And the do-good mindset is about creating a net positive effect. And this is really for restoring the health of ecosystems, but also societies. And the do-good mindset, as an individual, you could be working in your communities with disadvantaged groups, for example. This is kind of the social dimension. You could also be joining initiatives in your company that address sustainability challenges. For example, when I was at The Economist previously, I joined the sustainability committee there to look at things like how can we reduce our supply chain emissions, how can we create events that have a low carbon footprint. As a business, the kind of things you could be looking at is really almost like creating a very diverse leadership, increasing opportunities for diverse leadership. And if you're a country, the kind of things you could think about is kind of increasing access to education, to social welfare, to health. And then there are great examples. I'm very passionate about the ocean. The ocean is really my world. And the kind of things as examples for a do-good mindset is actually involving citizens in scientific progress. And there's this organization called PADI, the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. And what they do is they work with divers that actually help collect data on things like marine debris and the health of coral reefs. And this kind of data really creates scientific progress. So getting citizens involved, citizen science, is one of those great examples. But then one of the problems is with this do-good mindset, it can actually have detrimental impacts. It can actually have unintended consequences. So for example, it could be, sometimes has been called out as kind of white saviorism. It's because it's all about, it's often about doing things to people rather than doing things with people. So what we really need to move towards, and the bridge that we need to build, is this bridge towards a just and regenerative mindset. And the just and regenerative mindset has really three components. So one is really embracing the power of nature to renew and regenerate. And then it's also about, having humans as a fundamental part of nature. We are part of nature. Nature is not something external and separate from us. And also it's about respecting human rights and universal rights, and also the potential for everyone to thrive. These are the three components that we have, but it's ultimately about how can we work together with people to build different goals for the systems around us, really shaping the goals of the systems around us. So for example, if we think about systems around us, we often see them as separate. We don't see us as kind of part of that, and we don't think about them as living phenomena. And often we look at systems and think like, these are things that happen to us or that are external to us. If, like for example, if you sit in a car and you complain about the traffic, and then you realize, actually, I'm part of that. I'm part of that traffic. So we can change those kind of things. So looking at changing the goals of the system. Think about the food system, for example. Currently, the food system is really geared towards extraction and exploitation of people, animal, plants, and so on. And it's not really about things like animal welfare, the soil health, restoring nature. It's really focused just on efficiency and extraction. And these are the goals of the system. So when people say the food system is broken, then actually maybe it's not broken because the goals of the system are towards extraction and exploitation. So the just and regenerative mindset is about working together with people, with nature, to change the goals of the system. And for me personally, this has been a great way of feeling empowered, feeling part of nature as kind of a living, as systems, as a kind of a living phenomenon that we can shape. And the kind of examples that come to mind is, as an employee, you can work for an organization that works towards reducing and systemic inequalities and restoring nature. And this is actually one of the reasons why I personally chose to work for Forum for the Future, because they do address those kind of systemic inequalities. Another example is Faith in Nature. This is a body and hair care brand, and what they do is they have actually reserved a seat on their board of directors for nature. That's absolutely brilliant. And then there's also, an example from the ocean world, which I'm, very passionate about, and that is Interface, the carpet manufacturer. They have worked with ZSL to work with local communities to bring those kind of fishing nets that have been abandoned and actually recycling them and actually bringing them back into the economy and producing kind of carpet tides from that. And that's absolutely fantastic example of building a circular economy, but also engaging with communities to create new jobs, but also to restore nature. It's a fantastic systemic solution. So this is one example, but there are actually great examples from the world of politics as well. So there are countries like, for example, Panama. They have given rights to nature. And then there's this country, Bhutan, which has actually, their main metric of success for their society is gross national happiness. This is the focus rather than gross domestic product or economic growth. So these are fantastic ways, and these are all approaches that really embrace the potential of systems to really rejuvenate, regenerate us and nature in a self-sustaining way. And that one thing that you might be thinking about is actually, why does this matter and how does this relate to mindsets? And this is a great quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "You cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it." So as you can see, mindsets are absolutely critical in change. And I'd like to present to you one tool in which you might think like, how do you actually shape mindsets? How do you change systems around you and how you can work with others? And one is the 3 horizons model. And that's really about, the kind of things where you think, how do I get to an optimistic future from where we are now to this kind of just and regenerative future. So in Horizon 1, and just to highlight that this tool has been created by Bill Sharp, but others like Forum for the Future, for example, are working with these tools. And Horizon 1 is really about this kind of business as usual world, and the voice of that world is managerial. How do we manage the system? It's dominated by the kind of the business and political voices that want to keep the system as it is. And think about, for example, the food system, as we just said. It's about that extraction extraction, exploitation. And think about the energy system, which is still very much dominated by fossil fuels, or the transport system, which is very much dominated by diesel and petrol cars. So then, these are the kind of things that are currently keeping us stuck. And also think about your own world, your sleeping patterns, your consumption patterns, your eating patterns that keep you kind of stuck in the past or keep you stuck in the present. And when you think about where do we need to be, you think about this Horizon 3, you think even beyond Horizon 2, you think about how do we build a viable future? What is kind of the vision for the future? And this is the kind of, a visionary future, and the kind of voices you could be hearing is from visionaries like Jonathan Porritt, the founder of Forum for the Future, who basically already in the early 2000s, he called for a capitalism as if the world matters, which is really kind of based on that prosperous future for wealth, equity, and ecosystem integrity. So in a way, you think about what is your ideal future, your ideal diet, your ideal world, and also systems, how can they be changed, like for example the food system towards one that's regenerative and focuses on things like animal health and social health, social welfare. So these are the kind of things that you can be thinking about. In Horizon 1, you might see spots, bright spots of Horizon 3 already. So the things that we talked about, like Bhutan and faith in nature and these kind of things. So for me, my Horizon 3, because in addition to the ocean, I'm really passionate. I love Latin dance. I love like salsa and cha-cha-cha and so on. For me, in my Horizon 3, I can do the perfect cha-cha-cha. But in reality, I'm kind of stuck between Horizon 1 and Horizon 2. But then Horizon 2 actually is critical, because Horizon 2 is about those transitions, these transformations, and we need them to be deep and urgent. We need them to be real transitions rather than just kind of keeping us stuck in Horizon 1. Think about electric vehicles, for example. Electric vehicles, if they are powered by fossil fuels, they very much keep us stuck in Horizon 1. So they're kind of Horizon 2 minus solutions. But if electric vehicles are actually powered by renewables, they could be driving us towards and building a bridge towards a future that relies on renewables and that is not harming the planet and so on. So that's the kind of thing that would be Horizon 2 plus solutions. So think about the transitions you need. If you want a new diet, what are the transitions you need to introduce? And it's a very empowering tool. It gives us agency. It gives us the opportunity to shape the systems around us. And the other thing to think about is that it's actually a dynamic system, because you can see signs of Horizon 3 already in Horizon 1. So, think about the polycrisis again just for a moment, and think about, how do you feel about it now? It isn't really that daunting, because we can build bridges towards a just and regenerative future. And this is a living root bridge in East Khasi Hills in India, which is a great symbol of this idea that we can build bridges towards an optimistic future. When I think about optimism, I think about the quote from Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivet-Carnac, the international climate leaders, that they said, optimism is a choice. They call for this stubborn optimism. And that is why it's so critical to think about, that we are part of these agents and can drive a just and regenerative future. To kind of sum up, when we think about building those bridges and walking on those bridges of recovery, think about, how we can move from extraction, for example, of natural resources towards regeneration. Think about how we can move from a world where we have, injustice and where we focus a lot on kind of exploitation of workers and nature towards building justice. Building a bridge towards something that is, beyond growth, something that focuses on well-being. Think about Bhutan, for example. We need to move away, and the building bridges example is great also to think about moving away from these examples that are about individual piecemeal actions. It's about systemic solutions. And building bridges is also about creating wider impact. So it's moving away from those actions that we think, like the do good things that we think are going to make such a difference, to think about wider impact. And finally, moving away from this focus on problems to really focus on potential. And when you think about building this just and regenerative future within you and with the systems and your context, it's not just something you do individually, but you can do with the organizations that you're involved in society, in politics, in the economy, and in nature as well. Thank you very much for your attention.